What's up, sluts? It's Blake T. Wild here, and I am sassy and I'm feeling rude because I have to talk about the Ultimate X-Men again. The Custodians, Agents of Cross. This 6-issue comic series asks the all-important question: what would happen if the only heroes that can save the world are an intelligent baboon, the world's smartest man with the power of elasticity only in his right arm, a teenage girl who controls fire, and a four-armed werewolf? Find out now, because issue 3 is releasing weekly over on my Patreon, with issues 1 and 2 having been uploaded there in their entirety. Each book of this 6-issue series is going to be over 50 pages, only $15 for these books. Far better deal than anything you'll get from Marvel or DC these days. And if you're in the Phoenix area, I will be attending Arizona Comic Arts Festival on March 22nd at the Phoenix Shrine Auditorium. Check it out, it's a one-day show, gonna be really great. They've had some great big-name guests in the past. This year they got Kevin Eastman, and that is going to be the first place that you'll be able to buy the physical copy of the Custodians, Agents of Cross, issue 3, which sees our heroes, the Custodians, as they travel to the Rallian Institute for Accelerated Learning to meet the most fantastic supergroup in training, the Infinitum Brood. Released in 2002, written by Mark Miller with art by Adam Kubert and Kare Andrews, this is Ultimate X-Men Volume 4, Hellfire and Brimstone. The book begins somewhere in the suburbs outside of New York City, and everyone's favorite petite Jewish girl, Kitty Pryde, discusses with her friends their plan to trick their parents by saying that they're each sleeping over at the other's house so that they can all go to a party. Kitty says goodbye to the friends and heads up into her apartment, where she finds her mom, who immediately calls her out on the sleepover that coincides with a boy at her school's parents going out of town. Her mom reminds her that she was also once 14. Kitty calls her crazy and tells her to call her friend's parents, and Teresa Pryde reveals she already did. And Kitty and her friend's plans have been foiled. Kitty storms off and yells that her mom has ruined her life and her friends' lives on top of it, and tells her mother that she's not 4 years old anymore. Teresa tells her to start acting like it. Kitty storms into the kitchen and finds the food that her mom cooked, spaghetti and meatballs, and gets even more upset because she's a vegetarian. She picks up the plate and prepares to microwave it when it falls through her hands, and Kitty looks down as the glass shatters and realizes she's falling through the floor. She screams out for her mom and then plummets through into the bottom floor of the building, which this scene has a great gag. See that shirt right there on the bench at the foot of the bed? It says Miller's Plumbing. Well, what appeared in the first panel of this book, parked right outside the apartment, is a Miller's Plumbing van. Kitty panics as the two in bed panic, and she says that she won't tell the woman's husband about what she saw here today, and then falls and stumbles through the wall. Then she appears outside, panicking, still falling over herself, and phases through the street as a bus drives towards her and into the sewers. Good thing the lizard and/or Man-Thing aren't here. Kitty then pulls out her phone, finds that it still works, and calls her mom and explains that it happened again. Later that night, after a long shower and some dinner, Kitty falls asleep in their living room as Teresa receives an email back from Charles Xavier. He invites her and Kitty to the school whenever they're able to come meet about enrolling Kitty and having a tour. Sometime later, Jean Grey drives the Prydes to the West Chester School, and they arrive to find Professor Charles Xavier. Kitty is scared and shy, and Professor X asserts that she is a mutant, and they are all mutants here, so she has nothing to worry about, and they are not as frightening as the news claims them to be. He then goes on to explain that her gifts may be unpredictable, scary, or even dangerous, and he reassures her that he will help her train and hone and understand the powers that she has. Wow! Is this going to be a Professor X appearance that I don't have to put in my Professor X is a jerk playlist? And then the two lead the Prydes into the school as Xavier heads to his office to speak with Teresa, and Jean gives Kitty a tour. Kitty and Jean walk around as she explains how Professor X found her in a mental ward, and the week before that, he rescued Scott Summers from a lynch mob. Then Jean goes on to explain how much Professor X has helped her control her powers. And apart from the occasional migraine or like her telekinetically moving some stuff in her bedroom as she sleeps, she is fine. She's fine. She's just fine. She's okay. There's no worries. She's all right. Don't look at it. Don't look at the title of this video. She's okay. Then Colossus shows up with Wolverine's corpse strung over his arm. They're returning from a joint effort with the NYPD to stop a drug ring that, get this, was using a telepathic mutant's cranial fluids as an ingredient in the drug. Colossus tells Kitty not to worry about Wolverine because his healing factor has already dealt with reforming all of the major organs that were damaged, and he should be waking up pretty soon. Then he tells Jean that they'll be in the danger room for their training. And then the duo pass the Beast's room, and Jean says that they won't be meeting him today because he recently broke up with his girlfriend Storm, and he took what happened to the former X-Men Iceman kinda hard. In the past volume that we just saw sometime recently, probably within the past month or two at the time of this book, Iceman was horribly wounded fighting Xavier's evil son, and now his parents are suing the school and Charles Xavier. Kitty then asks the obvious question. Who the hell is paying for all of this stuff? Jean says that nobody's really sure, but all that they know is that the school is sponsored by a group of anonymous billionaires that somehow know the professor. And meanwhile, Professor X and Teresa have tea as they discuss Kitty's enrollment. Teresa is unsure due to the violence, but Xavier notes that he finds that teaching children how to defend themselves is just as important as Macbeth or the quadratic formula. Teresa brings up what happened to Iceman and the current lawsuit. Then she says that she does not want Kitty to be involved with anything dangerous. She just wants her daughter to learn how to control her intangibility. She can only approve if Kitty is left out of the insane superhero missions. Later, the X-Men watch as Colossus drives Kitty and Teresa home, and then Jean is alone. And she spins around to see the Phoenix. She falls to the ground, gasping and heaving and sweating profusely. She cries out for Charles Xavier and tells him that the visions are back. A month later, in Pakistan, these horrible freaks called the Animal Evolutionaries, who are either mutants who have very animalistic mutations, or are animals who mutated. Kind of like the original idea for Wolverine, where they wanted him to be an actual Wolverine that turned into a man because it was a mutant. I don't know what the deal is with these goddamn things, because there's like no information about them online. It's very rarely brought up. The gorilla one seems to be an actual gorilla that turned into a man, kind of. It doesn't matter. They're gonna die. Anyway, they invade a military compound with Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and whoever's left of the Brotherhood of Mutant Supremacy. Then they work on removing and casting into space the country's nuclear arsenal. And sometime later, at a safe house, Quicksilver gives a message to the world regarding their disarming of both Pakistan and India's nuclear arsenals. And he continues that their goals are not an altruistic disarming of the world, it's simply to show the power of the Brotherhood and their upcoming control of the human world. And the camera pans back, and we see Blob behind the camera filming Quicksilver, who demands that they run the auto cue a bit quicker. Blob tells him that he's speaking way too fast, and he was hoping to slow him down to really get the message across. And then Quicksilver gets annoyed and orders them to reset to go again. Then the Pro-Simian marches out of the room and complains that Quicksilver is an idiot. He sits down and continues to complain about Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch and says that they're too focused on their ceasefire with the X-Men and these missions about getting their faces into the public eye, more so than they are about actually fighting. The Dog Man says that they should remain loyal, especially since Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch helped them break out of the test labs that they were prisoners in. Pro-Simian looks down at his friend, the Centipede Woman, and says that he didn't join the Brotherhood to be some campaigner. He joined to bring blood and make heads roll and change the world. And then whatever the fuck this guy is notes that they outnumber the regular mutants now that Juggernaut and Rogue left with Toad and all the others. Elsewhere at the Xavier Institute, Cyclops inspects... Is that a picture of the Hawaiian coast? And it doesn't matter because Kitty Pryde shifts through the map table and asks what he thinks of the superhero name Shadowcat. Scott tells her that she should be studying for her physics paper, and she says that it bored her too much and she wanted to see what he was up to. And I don't know if it's just me reading this, but I kind of get the vibe that she kind of has a crush on Scott. It makes sense, you know, she's about the right age for hormones to be running amok, and like, he's a handsome jack dude who's I don't even know how much older he is than her. Probably 4 to 6 years, I'd imagine. But, like, this sort of comes across like her trying to just be around him constantly. And this is probably something that Scott has had to deal with for the past month. Anyway, he explains that he and Colossus are going to be going on a mission to the Savage Land in the morning, and he's just trying to refamiliarize himself with the topography. And also, we now learn a bit of exposition about the Savage Land in the Ultimate Universe. I don't know if it's brought up before, but it's not in the Antarctic in this universe. It's like a South Asian island or something like that. I don't know where it is, but it's not the South Pole. It isn't just a regular kind of island that's far away from everything else, and at some point it's revealed that Wanda's the reason dinosaurs are there. But currently, now that it has been abandoned by Magneto and the Brotherhood of Mutants, it's currently under the control of, I guess, the US military, probably S.H.I.E.L.D. and the US military, who have just been stripping it apart and trying to rework anything of note that they have found there. Kitty then shows off her skills and asks if she can go with them, because she's gotten really good with her phasing. Cyclops doesn't give a hoot in hell, because she is restricted from missions into jungle hellholes. Then Wolverine rocks up. Cyclops demands to know why he's here instead of in Boston with Storm, helping to handle a hostage situation. Cyclops tells him that he better not smell alcohol in his breath as Wolverine lumbers towards him. Wolverine talks some shit, Cyclops turns to leave. And then Wolverine notes that he can gut Scott before his little ruby glasses even hit the floor. So yes, he probably has been drinking. Then he makes fun of Jean's headaches and says that ever since she and Scott started dating... Then he asks if it's a coincidence, or if she's missing some, quote, prime Canadian beefcake in her diet. And then he walks up behind Scott and whispers in his ear that Jean really enjoyed the taste she had of it back in Washington, and she'll be back for the main course pretty soon. What the fuck is this? God damn it, Mark Miller. I thought I was done with this. I thought we were over this. I thought what? I thought the characters were growing and changing and becoming better. I thought it was becoming better, and I was a fucking fool. God almighty. Cyclops fucking decks Wolverine and then orders Kitty Pryde to alert the professor. Then Wolverine busts his ass and Scott blasts him through a wall. Scott walks slowly towards the dark rubble and Wolverine roars as he snicks his claws and tries to kill him. Then he falls to the ground unconscious, and Professor X and the other X-Men arrive. Xavier demands to know what's going on. Then he appears in Scott's mind and informs him that he'll be placing them both in cerebral detention for the night, and that they need to think about what they've done. And he tells Scott that he is very disappointed. In the real world, Kitty cries out that something is wrong with Jean, and Jean lies in the fetal position screaming in terror. Horrible hallucinations of demons assault her mind. The next day, oh my god, what the fuck? What happened? I knew that the art changed, but I didn't realize it would be so drastic. And why does Beast look like he's posing for an OnlyFans photo shoot? Anyway, Kitty tells Beast that they're doing some training soon, and Beast tells her he's almost done with his critique of Karl Marx's Das Kapital, and that he'll be there soon. She phases through the wall, and Beast quickly returns to his online chat with mutantchick421 at yahoo.net. Also, really, Beast? That's your email? Beast tells Mutant Chick that even though she's only been gone 48 hours for her lingerie shoot, he misses her and asks if they can finally meet in person for the first time. Mutant Chick messages him back and says that she's only recently discovered that she's a mutant and that she cannot bring herself to actually talk about it in person. And she apologizes for being so weak. Beast tells Mutant Chick, aka Naomi, that he understands completely. He wears his heart on his horribly furry sleeve. Then we cut to the Brotherhood of Mutants hideout and discover that the Beast has been catfished by the Blob. And as we'll see, I think Beast deserved to die in Ultimatum. Blob did too, but for entirely different reasons. Elsewhere, Jean and Scott hang out within their minds. Jean tells him that even though she's had 3 psychic attacks in the span of 12 hours, she's hanging in there. And Jean tells him that this is nothing compared to what she went through at the hospital. And Scott tells her that he knows she's strong enough to make it through all this. She explains that this time, whatever it is she's seeing, feels like it's trying to break through to her. And Scott asks her what she means. And Jean then explains that she feels that she's been selected to host an ultra-dimensional entity that wants to access this reality so that it can annihilate everything like it has 1 billion worlds before. It also speaks to her in Latin and calls itself the Phoenix and says that it is here to desecrate and unravel the entirety of existence. I mean, yeah, that pretty much covers it. She asks how much longer they have until they land, and Scott explains that they're about 10 to 20 minutes away. He apologizes for leaving her when she really needs him, and then he wakes up in the Blackbird. Meanwhile, dumbass Beast messages Naomi all the crazy shit that's happened at the school the past few days or weeks or whatever, and how Wolverine and Cyclops are on a trip to the Savage Land to find some missing U.S. Marines, and Blob works to equally torment and kind of radicalize Beast. Then, Beast reveals that their secret sponsors sent a representative to help deal with Iceman's parents. Then he continues to explain that he knows who the mysterious financiers are. And they call themselves the Hellfire Club. But that's not all, folks. Beast tells Naomi that Magneto is still alive. And Blob calls everyone over, and Procimian orders him to convince the Beast to meet in person. Cut to the Savage Land, aka the part of this book where the art and the coloring actually work very well. Wolverine smells around the attack zone and deduces that the Marines are already dead, but they were killed and their bodies dragged away. So the two set out into the jungle, and eventually night falls and a T-Rex just kind of runs past them, hunting some other dinosaurs, and then Kitty Pryde freaks out and is found by Scott and Logan. She explains that she snuck aboard the plane before they took off. It's a regular Jurassic Park The Lost World situation. Cyclops orders her to head back to the plane and wait inside with the cloaking device activated, so she reluctantly heads back. Later, Scott and Logan lower themselves, and this panel is fucking great. I love this so much. I love the shapes, the colors, the design, the layout. This is my favorite thing of this volume. This is what we could have had that past issue. That whole bit about Beast and Blob just totally wasted this artwork, because 95% of this issue is action and movement and intrigue, and it looks fantastic. Wolverine and Cyclops move beneath the former city and argue back and forth. They eventually arrive at a giant closed door that seeps with the smell of rotting flesh. Wolverine senses the rotting smell growing closer. Then they're attacked by zombie soldiers. That's right, zombies are in this book now. Reanimated dead. Wolverine unleashes his berserker rage on the undead soldiers, and then dozens more arrive with guns. And a giant mechanical voice echoes through the dark corridors and notes that they will be shot and killed if they resist. Then the duo are led into the facility by the zombified soldiers, where they come face to giant robotic monster face with the computer AI that used to keep Magneto's city up and running. You see, after the abandonment and dereliction of the city, the computer started to become self-aware, and influenced by its creator, Magneto, it knew that it too had to evolve. Wolverine laughs off the idea of a mutant computer. What's next? A giant dog man playing pool while a gorilla man sits and reads the newspaper next to a woman with the head of a woman and the body of a fucking centipede? Don't be ridiculous. Anyway, the computer explains that it rebuilt itself and began reanimating the dead somehow. Then the massive machine begins to short circuit and freaks out and fucking explodes. Kitty Pryde then phases through the ground and reveals that she accidentally phased through the machine as she was looking for Cyclops and Wolverine, thus establishing an element of her powers that comes up quite often. And that is that if Kitty phases through any piece of technology, it ruins it. Cyclops orders Kitty to get the hell out of here as he and Wolverine then destroy the remaining zombie army. And meanwhile, in a high-rise in New York, a mysterious group all sit around a long table and drink wine and discuss Jean Grey's current status. The head of the table notes that her body is becoming accustomed to the idea of serving as a host, and notes that alignment is only 48 hours away, and thus decides that it is time for the Hellfire Club to finally meet the X-Men. The X-Men, Xavier, Jean, Colossus, and Storm all arrive at a massive gala held by the Hellfire Club. They head inside and all split up and enter the massive gala. Jean and Storm break off, and Storm asks Jean how she's holding up. Jean tells her that she actually feels incredible, and it's the best she's been in weeks, although she is a little worried about Scott and the Savage Land. The team goes around and meets all of the influential, famous celebrity guests as Xavier is brought away to meet the current Grand Master of the Hellfire Club, Sebastian Shaw. Charles shakes his hand and thanks he and his associates for their financial assistance over these years. Shaw smiles and notes that they're just investing in the future. Then they're brought some champagne and the two cheers to the future. Shaw leads Charles back out to the center of the room and calls everyone to focus their attention on the guests of the night. He goes on a spiel about how great the Hellfire Club, how long their history is, and how much they boast a proud background of charitable donations, and that tonight they are all here to honor Professor Charles Xavier and his Westchester school. He continues that there is another reason for meeting tonight, something that Charles isn't aware of. And then one of the Hellfire Club soldiers opens fire on Colossus. Another shoots down Storm, and Shaw laughs in Charles's face that the whole thing was a facade. And then Xavier is shot out of his chair. Shaw then orders the three to be restrained and taken to the temple. Then he walks away with a despondent, submissive Jean Grey. And sometime later, in a massive chamber in a dark burning ring dedicated to the Phoenix, which the Hellfire Club worships as a god because they're a fucking cult, the three X-Men are tied to a big stone as Sebastian and Jean stand in the center. Xavier awakens to all of this and very calmly asks what the fuck is going on. Sebastian begins a chant and prayer to the Phoenix god, and Jean erupts in fiery energy. He calls for the bright light of the Phoenix to rise into the night, to explode across the world, and the Phoenix breaks through reality and overtakes Jean Grey, and then she kinda turns into Gozer from Ghostbusters. Sebastian pleads his loyalty to the Phoenix, and Phoenix demands to know why they dared to command a god. Sebastian assures that the Phoenix misunderstands the whole situation. And he wasn't attempting to bind it. No. He was simply summoning it here to do its bidding and follow it to greatness for all of eternity. And then the Phoenix asks a very good question. Why did they decide to use the spirit and soul of a host whose three friends they just betrayed? And all of the Hellfire Club members explode in fire and crumble to skeletons. Sebastian pleads with the Phoenix not to kill him, and the Phoenix laughs in his face and asks if he wants mercy like he planned to give to Jean Grey's friends. Then the Phoenix destroys the whole fucking building in a big explosion. This frees the X-Men, and the Phoenix disappears and Jean comes too. Colossus asks what the hell just happened, and Jean looks down at her chest and sees the symbol of the Phoenix now burned into her flesh like a tattoo. Then there's a call on one of their compact radios, a priority alert from the Beast. Storm picks it up and Beast tells him that he went to go meet who he thought was Naomi, but was actually the Brotherhood of Mutants, and that they know everything. They know that Magneto's alive and brainwashed and living in Queens, and he straight up lies and tells them that the Brotherhood had all these psychics ripping all of the information out of his brain, and he tried not to tell him he truly tried. And he waits for them to come pick him up in an alley. As the X-Men leave the burning husk of the Hellfire Club throughout the city, metal objects lift up and enter the darkening, overcast sky, and it forms a message before plummeting back to the ground. And somewhere in a penthouse overlooking NYC, Magneto stands with the current members of the Brotherhood. He asks who of them had the courage to go behind his children's back and rescue him. Prosimian steps forward and reveals that he hatched the scheme himself. Magneto walks with the ape man to the window. Magneto tells the Prosimian that he embodies everything that's wrong with the Brotherhood in his absence. He's gross and doesn't make any sense. And then he launches a lamp through the Prosimian's chest and into his heart. Magneto is then given his cloak and helmet, and notes that the first order of business is to get funds and some better membership. Then he orders a message to be sent out to all previous members for their immediate return and apologies made to Magneto for failing him, or else. Then he tells the group that the treachery of his two children and their total incompetence will be made examples of. And he places his helmet on his head and says, "Tell them Daddy's home." The end. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought of that in the comments below. What are your thoughts on this weird introduction to the Phoenix? of the Ultimate Universe. And all the other stupid shit that happened. Magneto's back. We'll see that next time. Magneto's doing his return. I think that story arc's called Return of the King. I don't know. I don't know why I thought this series was getting better after that last one. Is it because I found myself enjoying all the other Ultimate comics that I've been covering? That I've been like, I gaslit myself into thinking that this one too must be good? It's just, oh god, some of this shit, man, it's too much. It's too stupid. There's good stuff in here. There is, I'll say that. There is some good elements. It's like an elephant ate a little dime bag of gold nuggets, and now you have to sort through its massive turds to find them, though. And my favorite thing, like I mentioned, is the Cyclops and Wolverine in the Savage Land fighting zombies created by an intelligent supercomputer who claims it's a mutant. Like, that's a really crazy, out there comic book idea. But nothing's really done with it. It's immediately taken care of. There's no threat. It's just, they need something for those characters to do. They need a reason why Jean, or why Cyclops isn't there for Jean. Blah, 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 blah. And of course, you know, the artwork really enhances that. Although, this section does introduce Kitty Pryde. And I especially love Ultimate Kitty. She's awesome. She's adorable. She's spunky. I don't know. Especially later once she gets fully introduced into the Ultimate Spider-Man series. Once she is, like, banned from the X-Men or whatever. She fully comes into her own there. I love Ultimate Kitty Pryde. This was a interesting introduction of her. It's very quick. It's not like in the normal comics where you expect to sort of follow her along and see what her sort of journey is like, becoming an X-Man, learning how to control her powers. She's in the first issue. She's afraid. She doesn't understand her powers. She's fine. And now let's talk about Jean Grey. Let's actually talk about Jean Grey. The Phoenix and the idea that the HELLFIRE Club sort of formed together as like a cult following it. It's a neat combination. And I do like this kind of iteration of the Phoenix, at least what we see here. Like, this version kind of seems a little more benevolent than the regular one. And I like how it acts towards Sebastian Shaw. It's like, I like the idea that because it was Jean's, like, spirit and her soul that it imbued this, like her own beliefs upon the Phoenix itself. It's not like she's completely overtaken by the Phoenix. The Phoenix still has to work within, like, her parameters. But this comic just moves so quickly, and not in a good way like Mark Millar's comics typically do. Miller knows how to tell a story that reads very quickly, that keeps you on your toes. This one just feels heavy and sluggish. It feels like he just kind of wanted to do a Phoenix story and get it done with. Because people were no doubt were like, oh my god, when is Ultimate Jean Grey going to become the Phoenix? When is she going to become the Phoenix? The Phoenix. When's the Phoenix Saga coming? When's the Ultimate Phoenix Saga? So he's just like, here's the fucking Phoenix. Is it supposed to feel that way, though? Is it supposed to feel quick and manic? Are we meant to feel like Jean Grey in these fucking issues? Because I had a terrible time, and she did too. Leave any recommendations for future Ultimate Era Marvel comics that I should be covering, all that jazz. Check out my Patreon for early access to my comics, early access to videos, commentaries, whatnot, cool stuff over there. Check out my Etsy shop if you want to purchase physical copies of the Custodians Agents of Cross, or my first comic series, 5 issues of Destructo Boy, which is a fun, silly sci-fi story suitable for all ages. And also, if you're going to be in Phoenix this month, on March 22nd, come by the Phoenix Shrine Auditorium for Arizona Comic Arts Festival. And that is about it. I will see you next time. Bye!